3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to another My Kids Locker. This is Victoria Wolders, your host, and I am so excited to share with you another empathy tale. Thank you so much for tuning in today to listen to this podcast episode. This is story number 49 now. I can't believe it. Man, time is going by. And today's story is called The Golden Vase. I hope that today you find yourself in a peaceful place. I hope today has been a good day for you so far. I hope today has been one that is restful. Maybe not necessarily on your feet, but maybe in your mind. If you have any questions or if you have any ideas for stories, I would love to hear them. So please drop me a note on mykidslocker.com. Subscribe. You can also connect with me through social media. You can find me everywhere. And this podcast can be found on Apple, Google Play, Spreaker, Spotify, and most major podcast platforms. Well, I won't hold you up anymore. I know we're all excited about this next empathy tale. And this empathy tale was shared in July 2019 to my children. I was on my summer break, and here we have it. This one's called The Golden Vase. So if you are comfortable, then I will begin. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the Oak and Eagle Kingdom, in the land of the Western Eagle, there lived a group of people in a village. This village was a very happy village. It was called the Maze Village. The reason why it was called the Maze Village is because there was something very special underneath this village. As we all know, the Oak and Eagle Kingdom was above the land, and the Water Troll Kingdom was underneath. But for some strange reason, under the Maze Village, there was an intricate maze of tunnels that was in between both of the kingdoms. What was fascinating about it was no one owned these mazes. So often the Maze Village children would go underground and they would travel through these mazes. They would absolutely love to play in these mazes because they were shorter and adults and giants could not get in there because they were just too big. Sometimes you'd see a random fairy or elf in there too. The water trolls thought they were cursed by the wizard of the Western Eagle, so they never went in. There were, of course, gems and jewels. Often children would find these little pieces and bring them up. Sometimes the parents would be able to get money for them. Parents actually didn't have problems with their children in the maze of tunnels. There was a small crystal cottage in the village. The crystal maker and his wife, who loved flowers and lived in this crystal cottage, devoted their lives to each other and to the village. The husband would make these intricate crystal vases that would just be so gorgeous. The husband's name was Crystallis, and the wife's name was Chrysanthemum. Well, Crystallis, he decided that he was going to take his talent and he was going to build a beautiful cottage. So he did. He built a beautiful crystal cottage. They etched the cottage with beautiful pictures of flowers and even included jewels and gems. He also put beautiful crystal vases on the outside of his crystal cottage, so Chrysanthemum could put her beautiful flowers in there. Crystallis and Chrysanthemum both loved and adored their crystal cottage. Often people around the Oak and Eagle Kingdom knew him as someone that was famous for his crystal. And he also was celebrated for the kindness that he showed. His wife was just as amazing. She would often grow flowers and give them away to people who were hurting and pain. She was delightful. She could grow these amazing flowers that were magical as well, and they had magical powers to them. Often fairies and elves, princes and princesses would come and pick these beautiful flowers and use them for different reasons. They would also use the flowers for medicine because they had medicinal healing powers. They would sometimes make people fall in love, and they were absolutely spectacular. One day, there was an announcement in the town square. The king announced that the maze of tunnels was falling apart, and for a full year, this maze of tunnels would be closed. There would not be any children allowed, and there would be a chance that it would never be reopened again. Their hopes were high that they would be able to somehow fix the maze of tunnels, and it would be open a year. But they weren't certain. The villagers were abuzz. They were surprised that the maze of tunnels was being closed because the gems and jewels people found were important for their livelihood. The children also enjoyed the maze of tunnels. However, they understood that the maze of tunnels was collapsing and it was unsafe. So the king announced that he was going to give them one full day before the tunnels were closed. Crystallis and Chrysanthemum both decided they were going to do something very special for the children of the village. There were many villagers and many children who were poor in their community. They wanted to help them. They wanted to give them something special. So, Crystallis and Chrysanthemum decided that they were going to put 100 vases down in the maze of tunnels. They would let the children go in for the morning and wander around the maze and then try to find the one single expensive vase. There was one treasure that would have beautifully embedded hundreds of miniature small diamonds and gold flecks. There would be a riddle given to the children in the town, and whoever found the hidden treasure would be wealthy forever. So what they did is they made an announcement in the town square at sunrise. They said, "Boys and girls, we have a vase that we have hidden in the tunnels. Your job now is to find it. But be very careful because there is magical flowers in some of these vases, and you never know what you're going to get. Only the one that is truly pure in heart and have eyes as kind and caring as our eagle will they be able to gain this wealth." So the children were excited, and Crystallis and Chrysanthemum had put their 100 vases underneath in the tunnels. That morning, when the sun was rising, there were a few children right at the entrance ready to go. Crystallis and Chrysanthemum stood at the entrance, and they said, "We know that our maze of tunnels will be closing. But if you find this treasure, it will be yours." As they looked among the children, there were only 3 at sunrise. There were 3 boys, and they were all neighbors. There was the baker's son, the banker's son, and the thief's son. The baker's son was known to be very arrogant because he was the one who always had the most beautifully baked goods. The banker's son was loud and disrespectful, and he was often very angry. He wouldn't know how to control his body. He would struggle with holding back his impulsivity. Then there was the thief's son. He was a very kind boy. People always thought that the thief would have another thief, but the thing is that people judged the thief because he made one mistake when he was younger. See, his father had stole money from the baker. He stole from the baker a couple of coins in order to buy some medicine for his mother. Yet one stolen thing caused him to have the name Thief in the village. And his son was called Thief as well. All three boys were the first to line up, and the only ones at sunrise. Chrysanthemum and Crystallis were surprised. The three boys were not friends, but all three walked together to the entrance that morning. Crystallis and Chrysanthemum said, "It's open now." And they crawled down, 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 down into the maze of tunnels. All three boys, the baker's son, the banker's son, and the thief's son, were very eager to find the treasure. They didn't know where to start. Well, the baker's son, he struggled with arrogance, and he said, "I am going to find the gold, whether you like it or not." He started down to go into the tunnels. He noticed a crystal goblet. He picked up the goblet and noticed some etching on the goblet. It was a magical goblet, and he was amazed at the fact that there was an etching. There were a few flowers that were leaning out of the goblet. He looked closely, and there was a riddle, and the riddle said, "Dear children, far and wide, I hope you know that there is going to be a tide that changes your perspective. I hope you know it means to take perspective. There is in this cave a vase, yet you may not end up becoming a slave. Follow kindness and care if you dare. Find your heart in the reflection or break it apart." By then, all three boys were together, and they noticed all the beautiful vases around. The baker's son dropped the goblet, and it smashed. And all three of them were shocked by the fact that the vase then turned into snow and quickly swifted away. They were surprised that something that was so solid had just mystically turned into snow. Well, the baker's son said, "I am going to pick this one." And he leaned over and picked a vase full of a bouquet of red roses. He said, "This is it for sure." It had beautiful etchings of roses on the outside, and it was covered in different specks that looked like gold. He picked it up and he read it. But just as he was looking closely at the words and the etchings on the vase, he could see that the roses all of a sudden turned into bats and started flapping, and all of a sudden the baker's son started to run off, and he dropped the vase, and the vase broke into 100 little bats, and the bats chased him out of the tunnel. The other two could hear the baker's son screaming and yelling as he was leaving the tunnels. The banker's son and the thief's son turned to each other and said, "Well, I guess it's just two of us." They kept on walking. They looked at each other, and the banker's son said, "I'm going to do this. I'm better than you." So the banker's son started to look for the treasure, and then he found this big, huge vase. It was made out of crystal, and there was gold flecks in it with little pieces of shimmering silver. It was gorgeous. There were calla lilies in it, and these big, big lilies were absolutely beautiful. He said, "I am going to get the goblet, and maybe I'll see some gold." So he picked up the vase, and he looked at the lilies. And just that very moment, spiders started crawling out of the calla lilies and started forming above the head of the calla lily, all the way down to the ground. They just started running down his arms. He dropped the vase, and it shattered everywhere. And the spiders, the small little tiny spiders, were coming everywhere. And the spiders chased him out of the tunnel. Once again, you could hear the boy running out of the tunnel, just like the first did. Well, the last one was left, the humble thief's son. He knew that his father had done wrong. He knew that his father had said sorry, and the son knew his father was young at the time, and he was foolish, and he made a poor decision. Even though the thief's son was still given the name, he didn't believe he should have that name. Luckily for him, his great-grandfather had given him one single gold ring. The ring was absolutely stunning, and he could use his ring to find out which vase had the identical type of gold. And so this boy decided to look for something that would match with this ring, and he found this beautiful, small, intricate vase etched in gold, and in it was something beautiful and simple: daffodils. They weren't anything special. There were no elaborate red roses or wonderfully beautiful calla lilies, but they were just daffodils. He picked it up. He picked up the goblet, and he held it close. And as he did, the vase sparkled. It turned gold, and all of a sudden the daffodils started to turn into gold coins, and they dropped into the vases. And the petals, all the petals turned as soon as they dropped into the vase into big diamonds. The stems turned into rolls of beautiful diamonds, and the vase was just glistening. The thief's son sat there. He was so overwhelmed that he had selected the correct treasure. "I'm going to be accused of stealing this," he thought, and so he started to walk out with the vase. He looked very closely at the vase, and it was etched in this beautiful gold that matched with his great-grandfather's ring. As he walked all the way up, he met Crystallis and Chrysanthemum. They looked at him, and they said, "We know that your father was named the thief in our village. We know he did wrong, but we have forgiven him, and you now can take your money and help him get a job. Help him find food for your family. This is the wealth you deserve, because your heart is pure and true." You are an example of what it truly means to be humble. At that very moment, the thief's son fell on his knees and wept, because he had never been given a gift quite like that. He had been given words and names that were unkind because of the family he came from. Now he was valued. He stood up and hugged the couple. He took some coins and he gave it to the impoverished children as he walked home to his humble home. He was grateful. He knew that he needed to thank the crystal maker Crystallis and the florist Chrysanthemum. He was very grateful, and he was very humbled. Then, at the end of all the day, he lay down on his bed with the crystal vase and the gold etching and the diamonds, and they sparkled magically into the nightlight. There was so much peace that came from the vase, and he knew that even though he was called the thief's son, that now he may be celebrated as someone who is a treasure because he found a treasure. The end. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for another empathy tale. Thank you so much for hearing our story today. And I hope that when you think of the story, The Golden Vase, I hope you think about how sometimes we judge people because of the families they've come from. And perhaps maybe if we start looking at their background and start realizing that maybe they need to be appreciated by who they are, then maybe things might change for them. Thank you so much for listening to today's story, and if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me through mykidslocker.com. This is Victoria Wolders, creating compassion one story at a time, and I hope you today create compassion one story at a time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.